One, Donald Trump does not want to play football. He was a tight end, but he doesn't want to get tackled by some dude who's been lifting weights all day and comes from a bad neighborhood. Uh-oh. Controversy. Again, Donald Trump. 2, Kamala Harris endorses, she's open to, reparations for slavery. Okay, how? To who? When? Let's look at the history. Let's find the rest of the story when it comes to reparations. 3, Oregon head coach Dan Lanning takes an intentional penalty, 12 men on the field to secure a win against Oregon State. Was he cheating, or is he just one of the genius coaches in situational football? It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Always on demand by subscribing at Apple or Spotify, or tuning in every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time at Fox News Facebook and Fox News YouTube channel. While you're there, hit subscribe to the Will Cain Show. There's a little link underneath the text description of this live stream. You can always join us here on the Will Cain Show. Got a big show with you today, Off the Rails, with my Fox and Friends weekend co-host, Pete Hegseth. But a pre-show debate erupted here at the Will Cain Show. The boys in New York did not like my take, and I admit a bit of inconsistency when it comes to sports bigamy. I'm a noted sports monogamist. I think you get one team. I think you're born to that team. I think it's largely geographically based. I don't think you get to pick and choose according to your favorite player. I think there's a reason that I'm a fan of the Texas Rangers, Dallas Mavericks, Dallas Stars, and Dallas Cowboys. And I think there's a reason that you should cheer for Jacksonville, tinfoil Patrick. I think there's a reason that you should like, whether it be the Yankees or the Knicks, two-a-days Dan. But when New York Mayor Eric Adams decided to don a hat that showed both the Mets and the Yankees allegiance, I'm inconsistent. I'm okay. And young establishment James, very upset. I think, James, you said a war crime.
Yeah, I think it's by far and away his most indictable offense.
Really? And
Easily.
He is currently under investigation, potential indictments, as we speak, for corruption and selling influence to foreign nations. Which you could argue, maybe, there's some tie-in here, selling influence to Turkey, playing both sides of Mets and Yankees. My argument is he's the mayor of that town, okay? He's the mayor of New York. It's understandable he represents the entirety of the city. Now, if he grew up and for his entire life he's been showing allegiance to one or the other, if his entire life he's been wearing a Yankees hat, but now that they're both in the championship series, he's trying to have it both ways, I get it a little bit. But I still think, his office, how about this? If I were elected governor of Texas,
Ooh.
Do I get to wear my allegiance to all the Dallas teams on my sleeve at all times, or do I have to kind of go to some Astros games? I may not go full fan, but I have to, like Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz shows up at A&M games, and he's an Aggie guy. He shows up at Longhorn games, and he's a UT guy. Once you go politician, you represent everybody, right, in your constituency. I don't have a problem with Eric Adams right now being Mets and Yankees.
He was a lifelong Mets fan.
I'm okay with it. I don't understand the hate between the Yankees and the Mets. I'm from Connecticut, so we hate the Red Sox, if you're a Yankee fan. I don't understand this hate between New York teams. It's the same city. It's the same thing. I'm okay with it. He's the mayor of the city. I back what Will's take is.
It's inauthentic.
Now,
he's pandering.
If you're president of the United States, you got to dance with who brung you. You've got to stick with your home state, your home team.
Yeah.
Now it's too big. You can't wear 32 teams in the NFL. So you dance with who brung you, who you've been there all along. But I don't know, man. I just see it different if you're the mayor of New York. What's up, tinfoil?
Well, I got to tell you, okay? If you are the mayor of New York,
His voice.
you've got to choose the scrappy underdog. I'm no Mets fan, but you've got to go with the Mets.
Why are you yelling?
Oh, no.
Are you yelling?
Yeah, why are you yelling?
Another bad take.
I'm trying to change. I don't know. Try not to do the
No, I like
thing.
it.
No,
It's just-
I don't. Yeah, no, I don't. I don't want a new version of Tinfoil Patrick on the Will Cain Show. I want the authentic, monotone, barely raises his energy above a pulse line level Patrick. But when you are the leader of Quick Hits, when you are the MC of Sabado Gigante, Will Cain Show edition, that's when I want Don Julio. I don't want you to morph permanently. See, this is, now you're learning, Pat.
Okay.
Now you're learning how Stephen A becomes Stephen A. Don't always be Stephen A.
Volume
You have
isn't
to be it
correct.
in little moments. Now, you're going to, before you know it, you're going to be going to barbecues in Jacksonville going, well, guys, here's what I was thinking.
Hey, now, how you doing?
Stick with who you are, Patrick. Keep the character for the character. All right, I don't have a problem with Eric Adams, even if it makes me a hypocrite. Go ahead and do it, Mayor of New York, Mets, and Yankees. We've got a big show for you today. Again, Off the Rails with Pete Hegseth. Plus, let's dive into Kamala Harris's embrace of reparations. Let's dive into a little bit of the history. Let's actually dive into the questions. What's it mean? Who would get, under what conditions, reparations? And the genius exhibited at the University of Oregon. All that coming up today on the Will Cain Show. But let's start with story number one. He is my co-host at Fox and Friends Weekend, Off the Grid, featured just this morning on Fox and Friends, and Off the Rails here every other week on the Will Cain Show. It's Pete Hegseth. What's up, Pete?
What's up? I'm here representing my 5-0 Vikings versus your. I mean, we don't even need to talk about it. But I will say, you know me, I'm a bit of a sports polygamist, a little bit. I moved to Tennessee. I've adopted the AFC team of the Titans. I believe that there are AFC and NFC relationships that can be had. But I do look forward to the day when you are the governor of Texas and you are at an Astros game because you represent Texas. So I'm with you on this, unsurprisingly. I think Mayor Adams just wants a Subway Series, and he's pulling for it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay.
That would be a tough call for me as governor of Texas. As you mentioned, it's not going to be a tough call for you. You'll flip on a dime. It's no problem for you. But for me, I'm not going to wear a Rangers hat to an Astros game. I wouldn't be that kind of governor. But then the question is, do I put on the Astros hat? See, that's what Ted Cruz will do.
Of course you do.
He's like you.
Of course you do.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it. I couldn't go to a Houston Texans game and pretend like I'm a fan of the Houston Texans. I couldn't do it. I can't go to an A&M game.
As long as they're not playing the Cowboys, they should be your number two. Once you're the governor, you're representing your state. You're cheering for the welfare. Think of all the additional business that'll come to those small businesses around, the Houston Texans stadium if they're good. You're trying to pump up your squad, and your squad is now Texas.
No. I don't want somebody wearing an IDF uniform on the floor of the United States Congress. I don't want any dual allegiances. I don't want hypocrisy. I don't want polygamy. So, no, I think that I will not be doing these things. Speaking of this, let's use this as a jumping off point into topic number one. Number one here with Pete Hegseth. It is the conversation we began this morning on Fox and Friends. I found this a pretty fascinating topic, Pete. So the stats are that young people are moving to small towns and rural areas more so at greater rates, not in sheer numbers, I'm sure, but in greater rates than they're moving to big cities. It shows that over history, so 80s, 90s, young people, we're talking about people in their 20s, but all the way up and through their 40s, moved to cities with a population of over 1 million. What we've seen, and it, I think, started before COVID, accelerated during COVID, and has remained so after COVID, is that people have started to live in small towns under 1 million. And I don't mean to just limit to that, because the article, which is in USA Today, suggests towns under 250,000 are popular. Now, you and I had a little bit different takes on why this could be. Go ahead and tell me why you think young people are embracing either small town or rural America.
Well, a little bit. I mean, I think our takes overlapped a good deal. I mean, take Nashville. I live in the Nashville area. It's under 1 million, 600,000, 700,000. So it's by no means a small town, but it's a town where you can get most of the big city without all of the crime and the nonsense and the hassle, and still get the kind of job that has you in the area. And you can access anything you want, but you live in relative peace and security. So I think both are true. I mean, you and I both grew up in kind of a golden age of you graduate and you go to the big city and you make it. I mean, I'm not saying it was the golden era of it. And there were plenty other people at other times that did the same thing. But we were in the sweet spot of that was just automatic. It was doable. The jobs were there. Your friends were going there. You developed a small little community inside an anonymous city. You made money while you could, and maybe you met somebody or whatever. You don't have to do that anymore. It's too expensive. This is my point. It's too expensive. And B, the upside is not worth it for the downside of the actual life that you live. Stepping over homeless people and smelling weed all day and wondering if you're going to get mugged. And then you're also correct that devices and communications and our interconnectedness have allowed us to be anywhere we want. COVID accelerated that. I live in Tennessee. You live in Texas. We work for the Fox News Channel, which is in New York City. It affords us the opportunity to do that because we can do something like Zoom, which we'd never heard of before COVID. And so technology has changed the entire game. But for a young person, I guess partly it's your phone, it's your interconnected ability to do that. But I just also think the appeal of the big city has been tarnished a little bit. COVID was a part of it. Big cities don't have the same allure that they had before. And I think that's a good thing.
So I think it's less about the big city being tarnished and more about the rest of America catching up with New York. So, and I only use New York as an illustration.
Sure.
So first of all, I don't think young people have ever cared about stepping over homeless people or some edgy, dangerous part of the potential for crime in their life. I think they've been doing that forever. And you know what? I'll go so far as to say they might even see it as part of the appeal. It's like adventure. You know, this is a little bit edgier. I'm going in the 1970s. I'm going to Times Square. What kind of seediness might I see? So I don't think that's ever been a big problem, and I don't think it's an enhanced problem now.
Coddle generation.
I do think the cost
we've got a softer generation that's been taken care of and highly curated, and they don't like the same dangers. Just saying.
Yeah, young people won't go into the peep show and step over the homeless guy to get inside the peep show in Times Square. I think the cost is a real issue about tarnishing big cities, specifically cities like New York. I do think that's an issue. It's really hard. I mean, I think I hear young establishment James, who works on this show, right? He's 25 years old. He works at Fox News. It's just hard, man. You got to stack up with roommates. You got to figure out, your transportation every day. It's not easy. But I actually think what's happened is an affirmative case for the rest of America. And this is something I didn't say on Fox and Friends. And now, granted, I'm old, right? But the things that New York offered me when I lived there for 15 years, you know what I found out, Pete? They're all present everywhere else. Like good restaurants. Now, you can drop down to a level of rural where you don't find it. But I would say this. Any city that is 200,000 or above, you've got all the eating options you're ever going to want. You got Chinese. You got probably Thai. You may have Indian. You got a great steakhouse, of course. You've got all of that. And so, the idea was, and I lived in a small town growing up, the food options were a legitimate thing. We'd go to Dallas for a big fancy meal or a good meal. You don't have to anymore. You get good food, I think, almost everywhere in America. Even Dallas itself, Dallas wasn't necessarily a cool social environment compared, even to a smaller town like Austin, but certainly for New York or LA. But now it is. What are you missing in Dallas that you can get in New York or LA? Every concert comes here, music, there's no art house movie theaters. Those are in every city in America now. So nobody even goes to the movie theater anyway. So what do you need to go to New York for? And so now is the affirmative case that I made for you. I think that the phone and connectivity is the answer to this, of why it's happening. We know about work, that everybody can remote work. But I think that there's two reasons you move to a big city. You did it for work, so you can make money and professionally network, and you did it for your social life. So you could go out to the bars, meet new friends, and honestly, meet your spouse. A bigger pool of good-looking girls. Now, that's not only is it not necessary, it's not done. There's a new I just saw this new poll out. The percentage of people that meet their spouse online has gone from 0 20 years ago to about 70% now. In our day, you met By the way, this is a 100-year sample size, Pete. I saw 100 years ago, it was like neighbors, friends, church were your top 3 maybe. School as well. And when they said school, they mean like 10th grade. College, I'm shocked. College was low in this, always. College has been under 10% always. But all of those things have gone way down, and online has overtaken couple making. 60 to 70% of couples are made online. So I think you can sit in a small town, work from home, and swipe left and right. I really think that's what people are doing. They swipe left or right all day long in their small town, and they don't need to move to New York.
It's probably true. That's probably true. I guess if I were I can't transport myself into a 22-year-old and how I would want to interact with a dating life. It's not something I relate to, but I can entirely see how it happens. And I'm not here to impugn it at all. I guess I can only look at my own kids, and, Barney Rubble here would like his kids to meet their spouse at church. I mean, that's where I would like to think that we're going backwards to go forwards because of the equally yoked. But here's the thing. Let's say the biblical principle, you want to meet somebody who's equally yoked. They have the same beliefs that you do. Well, you can do that online now too. You can find a certain online platform that matches you per religious beliefs or things. I mean, so it's all there. So it's not universally bad. I do think you're right on the food thing. I mean, where I grew up, and the nicest restaurant we had was a Perkins, and that was like above and beyond everything else. You know what I mean? I mean, things have ramped up, and in medium size, like your St. Paul from Minnesota or whatever the closest thing to Sherman, Texas was for you. I mean, it's just you've got most of what you want, and you got high speed internet. So yes, and amen.
Amen. All right, we have only 30 minutes with Pete Hegseth today, and I could drag this out, as people know, for 40 to 50 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit some other topics. I don't know. I kind of hope this hasn't hit your radar. I don't know if it has, but I love this. Donald Trump appeared on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. This is a Barstool Sports podcast hosted by 2 former NFL players, Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. And he was asked about whether or not he played football. Here's Donald Trump.
And I played football too. I didn't particularly like it.
What position were you?
No, I didn't like it. I played tight end.
Yeah. Can block.
And I didn't
catch,
like,
you had some hands. We got Delaney Walker behind.
I could catch the ball good, but I didn't particularly like having some guy that was lifting weights all day long and came from a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he sees me, and they were tackling hard.
So there you go, Pete. So I don't know. Have you seen that yet, or is this the first you've?
No,
the first you've seen of Donald Trump tied in.
Producers sent me the story like 10 minutes before we did it, and that's the first I'd seen it. So I'm pretty fresh to it.
It's pretty great, okay, and it's evidenced by Compton and Lewan laughing along. I mean, here he is. I didn't particularly like, getting hit by some guy that's been lifting weights all day and comes from a bad neighborhood. Okay, so it's a controversy. It's a controversy. I don't know if you have clued on in this part of the story. This is a controversy. It is a brewing controversy as we speak. And it's the comes from a bad neighborhood part. Was Donald Trump being racist about getting hit by some guy who comes from a bad neighborhood?
Of course not. In fact, I can very much relate to this sentiment, having played football in high school. All conference, honorable mention, didn't make the full thing. But there's guys that love to hit and there's guys that love to get hit. And I wish I had more of that like oomph of I want to be a linebacker and crush somebody. And I got some good licks in. And the military taught me a lot later on about that. But it wasn't in my DNA. And the kids who had it in their DNA were from the wrong side of the tracks. Okay? Maybe dad wasn't home all the time. Or maybe dad took it out on him. Or maybe there was just unfortunate family dynamics that led to maybe a little bit more aggression than is tolerable in polite society, but it works out great as a middle linebacker on a high school football team. and that guy happened to pump a lot of weight, so he's jacked, maybe on a little something, maybe not. This particular individual can remain nameless. But you'd also look at the other teams and you're like, holy, where did you come from? So wrong side of the tracks, bad neighborhood, rough family, whatever you want to call it. The reason they laughed is because they get it. Everybody knows that dude.
Yes.
And Donald Trump's from a wealthier family. He's not hitting the weights, but he's a bigger guy, wants to play football, but isn't obsessing over it and doesn't have an axe to grind. So he's out there with, monsters coming after his head and he's tapping out. I get it. It's the fact that it'll be a controversy, but it's not going to hurt him amongst, if he's on this podcast, he's talking to young men. Young men are going to relate to it.
No, because he's saying the thing that everyone thinks and actually sometimes says, that everyone understands exactly this thing. And I would even suggest that if you immediately jump to race, maybe once again, you are the one obsessed with race. It's like the whole guerrilla warfare thing. Do you remember this controversy in tennis? A ESPN tennis announcer says that Serena Williams or Venus Williams is employing guerrilla tactics in the tennis game. And
oh boy,
of course, that's Guerilla. That is not Gorilla. And he's talking about the way she's playing tennis in terms of her tactics, and they leapt to it being a black thing and made it racial, which then I think if that's where your brain goes, maybe you're the one who, in fact, is racist. And if everybody from a bad neighborhood is black, in your mind, maybe you're the one that's racist. Because you got guys from bad neighborhoods in every town, and you know what? Just like Pete Hegseth laid out, if you come from a little bit of rougher upbringing, seems like more often than not, you got a little more rougher edge on the football field.
Yeah, absolutely. And the dudes I'm talking about from Forest Lake, Minnesota, are all white dudes. Okay, none of this has anything to do with race at all. It's like a voter ID. If you have to show your ID, how in the world are you going to vote? And I love seeing clips of black people like, what do you think, I can't get an ID? Like, why does your mind go to the fact that I can't get an ID? Like, you're the one obsessed with race,
right?
Not me. This won't hurt Trump. See, it's nothing.
Well, I don't know if you've seen this, but we have an official response. The Washington Post is interested in an article about this. Of course, they're going to go which way they're going to go and whether or not this is race. So they reached out to the host of Bussin' with the Boys, Taylor Lewan and Will Compton, and they specifically wanted to know, why did you laugh along at this? So in true Billy Bush style, it's not just about Trump. The shrapnel has to hit everybody around, and you're a racist for laughing. So Compton didn't respond directly in email to the Washington Post. He gave a response directly to the Post and to the audience on X. Watch.
But just knowing that the direction they want to go with this thing as they write whatever article that they're trying to write. And they asked if Will or Taylor would provide a comment on why we found that amusing. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I'll publicly tell you guys my comment. So Washington Post, here's my comment about why I thought it was amusing.
I can't see it. What was it?
I don't think you had to. I don't think you had to see it. You didn't get the comment? Dan,
his
see if
comment
you
was
can
no
isolate.
comment. He didn't say anything.
Dan, isolate the comment so Pete can hear Will's official response to the Washington Post, okay? Apparently Pete wasn't capable. I felt like it was edgy for me to play it once, but because Pete's deaf, I have to play this twice.
But just knowing that
why
I thought it was amusing.
I didn't hear anything. I don't know what it is. I can't make you say it, but I don't know what it is. If you can't say it,
he holds the phone down. Pete, I'm gonna say it. He holds the phone down and farts. I don't know how you don't hear the fart.
Okay, that's what it sounds like. I heard a little meow, and I'm like, is that really what it is?
There's a squeaker.
First of all, that's amazing. That's exactly the way you should respond to the Washington Post. They're so unserious. They're so sad. Their existence is so sad. Good on him. I don't know this podcast. I don't know him. I know the name from football, but good. Like, no more statements. No more. Good. Fart in the phone. I don't care.
All right, let's stay on this. Let's stay on young men. I'm going to have to speed it up because I know I got to get rid of Pete in about 6 or 7 minutes. A liberal YouTuber who used to be on the Young Turks. Now he's on his own. He's one of the biggest YouTubers. He was talking about young men, this discussion we've all had about young men, and which way they're leaning politically. And he made a pretty fascinating observation, Pete, about hobbies, culture, and young men. Listen to this.
There is a massive amount of right-wing radicalization that has been occurring, especially in younger male spaces. Everything is completely dominated by right-wing politics. If you're a dude under the age of 30 and you have any hobbies whatsoever, whether it's playing video games, whether it's working out, whether it's, I don't know, listening to like a history podcast or whatever, every single facet of that is just completely dominated by center-right to, I wouldn't say far-right in the same way that it was back in like the 2016 era at the end of like Obama's administration, but like definitely center-right to Trumpian right.
So I think that's pretty fascinating, Pete. I think he's right. Like video games, lifting, working out, sports. What else? I mean, like almost everything
hunting,
you could be into.
Hunting, golfing, going to sporting events, you name it.
Yes.
I feel like if I walk into those environments, I'm walking into an environment where I know I'm surrounded by Trump supporters. It's a great point. It's a great observation. It's because being proud to be a man or to do manly things or to stand up for your responsibility or be masculine is to be on one side of the aisle at this. Look at the character they peddle with Tim Walz and all this nonsense of men on the left. Like your men on the left are deferential in different ways than men on the right. And they channel.
Well, they vilified masculinity too. They took an open antagonism to men. They called it toxic. And every single one of those hobbies, I don't know about hunting actually, but like video games, they attacked the fans of video games and called them, cretins and these types of things. I was there for sports when this was being done in sports. Like, I mean, you can't look up and go, hey, you know what? After 5 years of insulting and attacking the fans of this particular hobby, they might not be attracted to us.
Yeah. Maybe I go the other way. Maybe I go for the see something, say something president who is a bull in a china shop and doesn't hate me. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon because we talk so much about how school and big business and government and you name media, social media are all seemingly dominated by the left, but you've got this young uprising at the top. Yes, you got this young uprising of men saying, "Nah, not anymore. Like we are who we are, and that's okay." That's going to be interesting. Well, I wonder how far that dynamic continues.
Well, culture, when we were growing up, also dominated by the left. And you could say, okay, still is, like Hollywood or whatever, celebrity culture, but that's top down. That's top down managed culture, right? And so what's happened is as culture becomes more bottom up, more diversified, now I think you could argue there is, at least from the bottom up, I don't know what hobby or cultural subset you could say, maybe elements of some music genres are pretty influenced by the left.
Hiking.
I like to hike.
It's probably a more mixed demographic, though. If you meet a couple on the hiking trail, you're more of a 50-50.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. There's
an article at foxnews.com today about a new hiking trail this guy's trying to pioneer in Texas. 1,500 miles. I'm in. I'm going to endorse that as governor of Texas. I want 1,500 miles from Beaumont to El Paso, a hiking trail. I love it.
Like that. Okay.
Oh, by the way, you can also ride a horse. All right. You got to go in like 2 minutes, right? Yeah. I heard you have a hard out. So
I do.
I cannot give you, okay. Well, goodbye.
I play you this week in fantasy.
No, our final.
I feel like I've had a bad season so far, but this is my rebound, and go Vikings. That's it.
I don't know that I believe in karma, but I know that we play each other in fantasy, and it hardly even registered because you're not very good. And I know I'm not have a very good record either, but like that's just setting myself up for huge defeat this weekend to you. I know how that works, but I've done it anyway.
You're projected to win, but I've got the record about as good as the Cowboys, so look out.
All right. Are you working this weekend?
I'm not. I'm going to the UT Alabama game, the University of Tennessee, Alabama. I'm taking the whole family. We're going for tailgate and on the field, and take in some SEC football, which I've never been to a big SEC.
Are you going to wear
sight?
Are you going to wear a Princeton hat? What are you going to do? You going to wear a Princeton hat?
You can't see this under the screen, but I'm flicking you off with both hands right now.
If I see Instagram photos of you covered up in Tennessee Volunteer orange the entire time,
guaranteed.
I know
outcome,
you are.
9 family members, head to toe, Tennessee orange, all the way. We've adopted the Vols all the way. This is a Vols symbol right here, VOL. Okay, we are in. We got to Tennessee and we're hook, line, and sinker. In fact, where's my Tennessee hat?
Well, if you don't wear Princeton, hey, if you don't want to wear Princeton, you could always wear Harvard. You have that one too.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I love you, Will Cain. I love you.
All right. I love you too. I'll see you when I see you then if I don't see you this weekend. Pete Hegseth. See you, man. There he goes. My co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend and Off the Rails with Will and Pete. Okay. Kamala Harris appears with Charlemagne the God and embraces the idea of reparations. Let's go deeper. Let's go down the rabbit hole. Let's talk a little bit of history. What does that mean? How does that even work? Reparations and Kamala Harris. Next on The Will Cain Show.
It is time to take the quiz.
5 days a week, it's 5 questions in less than 5 minutes. We ask people on the streets of New York City to play along. Let's see how you do.
Including the pre-Super Bowl era, what NFL franchise has won the most NFL championships?
I'm going to say the Cowboys.
I guess I would say the Packers.
How'd you do? Exactly. These get tougher, so hang on.
Make sure you take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox. Thank you for taking the quiz.
Did you hear the news? Now you can. With instant updates from Fox News for Amazon Alexa. Breaking stories and top headlines, the economy, and so much more. Brought to you by Fox News, America's #1 cable news network. Plus, setup couldn't be easier because everything's ready to go in the app. Just say,
Alexa, play news from Fox.
In Fox News.
It's the latest when you need it, on demand, from Fox News and Amazon Alexa.
I'm Benjamin Hall, Fox News senior correspondent and New York Times best-selling author, and I'm searching for heroes. Every Monday, I'll speak with a few silent but noteworthy heroes, everyday people who illuminate stories of compassion and are true embodiments of heroism. Make sure you subscribe to my podcast, Searching for Heroes with Benjamin Hall, wherever you download podcasts, and please leave a rating and a review.
Kamala Harris calls for reparations. What does that mean? Who gets reparations? How do you apportion reparations? Is it one time and we're done with reparations? What's the history? That's coming up on the Will Cain Show. Streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. Speaker Mike Johnson went on CBS's Face the Nation. He faced a whole host of questions about everything from immigration policy to the federal government's response to Hurricane Helene. Now, this comes after an editing controversy that CBS's 60 Minutes had with their interview with Kamala Harris, where they stitched interviews from one portion of the answers from one portion of the interview to questions asked in another portion of the interview. Deceptive editing. Well, I guess, perhaps inspired by that, Speaker Johnson recorded the interview himself from his iPhone. And he did this. It was a pre-taped interview. He did it with multiple answers. And he showed you how they changed his answers, shortened his answers on all of these questions into a less flattering light. Here is one example that Speaker Johnson uploaded about what was done to him at CBS.
So that's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. The rescue and recovery effort's still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So that's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. And when I was there on the ground, and you should go, I mean, bring the cameras and talk to the people there. They'll tell you, don't take politicians' words for this or the administration's word. Talk to the people there on the ground. They had not been provided the resources almost 2 weeks out from the storm that they desperately needed. And when I was there, 13 days post the storm hitting that state, people are still being rescued. They're stuck in the higher elevations in the mountains because the roads are down and all the rest. So they need every available resource and all hands on deck. The rescue and recovery effort's still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So they edited out the entire relaying of first-person information of what's happening on the ground, the way people are responding to the federal government's response to Hurricane Helene. Now, first of all, I believe it was a 15-minute interview that was edited down to 5 minutes. And for better or worse, that's the nature of television. We have increasingly the opportunity, though, for it to not be the requirement of television. Television is, well, first of all, there's only so much given time for a certain given show. And you say, well, why do you have to edit a 15-minute interview down to 5 minutes? And the answer to that is ratings, to be honest. Like television, move, next, versus this right here, what we're doing together, right? There's no pressure on me to move along, to go faster, outside of what I want to do or how many topics I'm trying to hit with Pete Hegseth in the time he gave us today, which was 30 minutes. But in television, for example, in Fox and Friends, I'll constantly get, move on. And if Pete were sitting here with me, we could talk about this. Like, we all begin to understand pacing as well. Like, in that medium, have we belabored a topic for too long? And the audience's attention has expired. So what they do is they pack more into a show to try to do that. Well, we've got Speaker Johnson for 5 minutes. We've got this for 5 minutes. This is what we've got. What they ought to do, by the way, is just be it's broadcast, so they can't do live show. They got to tape it, meaning because it's broadcast, it's on CBS, it's in different times in different time markets across the country as the country wakes up. But to compromise, what they do is then they have to edit things down, get it tighter. And then we have to employ journalistic ethics. Like, did I not do a service to his answer? I've told you guys this, like, we interviewed Donald Trump for 90 minutes. Like, how much of that ended up making television? I don't know, a fraction of it, right? And we didn't like it, by the way, meaning Pete Hegseth, Rachel Campos Duffy, and myself. So we aired the entire thing here on the Will Cain Show. I would prefer not to be making those journalistic judgments. I don't make them anyway. It's editors and producers and that kind of thing on how it gets reduced. But it is a little bit of nature of the beast when it comes to television. So then you say, well, who are the people making these journalistic decisions, and what is their bias? What is their agenda? What are they trying to accomplish? And at this point, CBS has burned up any goodwill that you would trust them to make those editorial decisions to edit you in a light, forget fair, that is accurate. And good for Speaker Johnson for recording the entirety, which we can all do now with our iPhones and everything else. You can record the entirety and share it with the world. And the fullness of your answer is one benefit, but exposing the corrupt individuals controlling these conversations is the primary benefit. I've seen some people on the right say, no Republican should ever go on any of these channels anymore. I disagree. Go on and do that, because you're serving a dual purpose. You are showing not only a full answer, you are showing the corrupt decision-making process behind the scenes. And I don't throw that word lightly. I'm not just throwing it around to pick the most inflammatory word. That's corrupt. If you do the same thing, not a mistake. If you keep doing it over and over and always in one direction. Have you ever noticed, like, we never find the example of someone being biased the other way at any of these legacy media institutions? Never. So if it's always one direction and it's repetitive, tell me how it's not corrupt. Tell me how at some point it doesn't amount to election interference. Tell me how you're not a paid arm of the DNC. Good for Speaker Johnson. We need more people holding them to account. Kamala Harris appeared on a podcast with Charlamagne tha God, one of the hosts of The Breakfast Club, a morning show in New York City. And they began to discuss reparations. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say about reparations.
So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position.
So she's been clear about that position since 2019, that they always say, is open to the conversation about reparations. But, I mean, I think that is clearly an endorsement of a potential United States government policy of reparations, presumably to Black Americans who are the descendants of slavery. Well, I find this fascinating because, first of all, I think 20 years ago, not only would that be a political non-starter, it would be a political killer. If Bill Clinton or Al Gore at the time had embraced the idea of reparations, Americans would have rejected that politician. And I think it's pretty substantial that we're living in a day and age when the candidate of one of the two major parties is openly talking about moving down the path of reparations, and she could be elected president. That is a huge shift in America. And I don't think it's a good shift. So what is reparations? Like, one could argue we've already done reparations. I mean, affirmative action. What is affirmative action but a form of reparations? I mean, the exemption from paying taxes, property rights redistribution, direct payments to individuals. What is reparations? What are you talking about? Now, most, in America at least, talk about direct payments to individuals. And the reason I think this should be such a political non-starter, and can't believe we've arrived at this moment, revolves around the concept of agency. Agency. This, the United States built on the idea of individual rights. Obviously, a principle at which we have not been consistent in application. But today, everyone alive, responsible for their own lives, agents over their own decision-making, no one is responsible for slavery. No one. No one is a direct beneficiary of slavery, and no one is a direct victim of slavery. Now, I understand the arguments that are made about, the continuation of wealth buildup over time and how that was enhanced for some people or deprived for others. I get all that. But at some point, agency has to come back into it. How are you a victim and I am a perpetrator? Because I feel like philosophically and morally, if you can't make that case, you can't make a case for why my money should go into your pocket. How are you a victim and how am I a perpetrator? Agency. If you go beyond that, I think, how ugly would it be? Like, who gets reparations? Are we going to have like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission? That's kind of what they've set up in San Francisco, by the way, where they have approved reparations. They'll never pay it, but they've approved it. So how do you decide if somebody's a descendant of slavery? What if they're also a descendant of a slaveholder? Are they both a beneficiary and a victim of history? Aren't we all? Who gets reparations is one of the ugliest decision-making processes I can imagine in history when you're this far removed from the incident. Now, if we go back in history, there are some examples of this being done. The United States government has paid reparations to Japanese Americans for Japanese internment. In, I believe it was the 1980s, it was $20,000 to survivors of Japanese internment for property loss during that time, being ripped away from their homes and their jobs. In that situation, you're not talking about the descendants of Japanese internment, but the survivors of Japanese internment. I believe the state of Alaska has employed some form of reparations for Native Americans. It involves them receiving some funds from, like, a tax on oil extracted from that state. In the Holocaust, Israel has sued Germany several times over for reparations for survivors of the Holocaust, property loss. They've also sued, by the way, companies that were involved in slave labor connected to the Holocaust. Aetna, Deutsche Bank, they've been sued several times for this. In that situation, there's articles been written about this. There's such thing as a Holocaust industry where people are deciding who gets what, and there has been large fraud in people receiving payouts from the German government, which they've done on several rounds of occasions, who weren't survivors of the Holocaust, weren't involved in the Holocaust. You create this very, very ugly situation, the ugliest, I think, of which historically takes you to South Africa. In South Africa, they have followed a model in some part, a model that has been forwarded called dignity taking and dignity restoration. The idea is direct payments and these sorts of things don't go far enough in restoring the dignity of the victims of history. And this requires a dignity taking, the destruction of property rights. Now, you've heard about farms being taken in places like Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, and in South Africa. But the power of this is placed, quote unquote, in the victim's hands. And the purpose is to restore dignity. So the point on this is once you start going down this rabbit hole, I don't think there's any end. I'm a little surprised. I've even seen some people on the right saying, well, if we go down the road of reparations, make it big enough that this never comes up again. What I would say is there is no big enough that this never happens again, meaning a continuation, rolling reparations that inevitably take you towards dignity takings, dignity restoration. It's like a pathway to citizenship and illegal immigration. Okay, you want to take the current population of illegal immigrants and provide them a pathway to citizenship to becoming American citizens. Okay, let's just say we agree to that. What happens with the next wave of illegal immigrants? Do they also, after some period of years, find a pathway to citizenship? And then the next wave, and then the next wave. There's no one time, oh, we're going to deal with this one population and it's not going to happen. It's going to continue happening as long as we have an open border. And to some extent, there will always be an open border. It will never be 100% sealed. So you're just going to have rolling pathway to citizenships. So what is the reparation that no matter how ugly you make the commission and no matter how, transactional you make the payment, whether or not it's a one-time payment, it's, exemption from taxes, that will satisfy it so it's not rolling reparations into history for people that were never involved in slavery and to the benefit of people who were never slaves. You will have it rolling on into the future, inevitably. And for me, someone who is not willing to address these questions directly, answer my questions I have about this, and deal with the philosophical, moral problems involved in something like this, it's a disqualifier for running for president of the United States. Dan Lanning, the head coach of the University of Oregon, did something genius to beat Ohio State. Was he cheating? And where does that put him in the categories? I've got 4 categories for you of great coaches in football. That's next on the Will Cain Show.
It's the Will Cain Show.
There's too much of the right that has said all of our institutions are rotten, and they're basically bleeding us into there's no point in trying and signing us up for perpetual loserdom. I really feel that way. You just start winning. You start fixing your morale and executing your X's and O's. We all need to start doing our stuff. It doesn't make the other side right or the institutions pure, but it keeps us from being damn losers.
Streaming live 12 p.m. Eastern weekdays on FoxNews.com and the Fox News YouTube channel.
Streaming now on Fox Nation, God, Family, Football.
As a head football coach, my job is to teach these boys to worship is what it means to win.
A new series that follows a small-town football team.
My little brother was diagnosed with leukemia. It just pushes me to be stronger.
With a big-time heart.
I always do trust in God.
Go inside their lives and follow their faith.
Everybody needs help tackling life.
God, Family, Football. A new series streaming now. Part of Fox Faith on Fox Nation. Sign up at foxnation.com.
It is time to take the quiz.
5 days a week, it's 5 questions in less than 5 minutes. We ask people on the streets of New York City to play along. Let's see how you do.
Including the pre-Super Bowl era, what NFL franchise has won the most NFL championships?
I'm going to say the Cowboys.
Good guess. I would say the Packers.
How'd you do? Exactly. These get tougher, so hang on.
Make sure you take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox. Thank you for taking the quiz.
You think inflation is bad now? If this insanity called reparations is implemented, inflation will quadruple and worse, says Lou Lewis on Facebook. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News Facebook page, also on the Fox News YouTube page. You can jump into the comments like some of the following members of the Willisha. Vix Wolf says, when it comes to why young people are moving to smaller towns, than big cities. Yes, less crime is critical, especially when you've grown up in a place with too much crime and not being safe there. James, you're young. You're in this demo. You live in New York. Do you care about, I don't mean to be dismissive of crime. We talk about this from a real perspective, but my position is young people don't worry about crime so much. Are you worried about crime?
I mean, you gotta be a little vigilant. It's definitely it's more annoying. Like, I want to be able to walk outside at 9 o'clock at night, not have to like.
And you're a victim.
Look, yeah. Well, I got myself out of that twice. It was more of an impressive feat than a victimhood deal. I don't believe in victimhood.
James, how did this work? You took a ride in New York, like a random street ride? You didn't even order the Uber? You took a
story right.
Well, I don't want it to be long.
Do you want the New York one or the DC one?
New York.
Okay. That's just
one step on your foot.
This one's not as cool, unfortunately. No, but it was more or less the guy was like, "You're getting in the car," and there was nothing you could really do because you could kind of tell he might have had something, but you weren't sure, and you just kind of feel your way out of it. And
you just got bullied into a car, right? That's what you did. You got bullied in. I remember the story. You got bullied into a car.
Yeah, but I got out of it when I saw my opportunity.
I know you want to get to the heroic
survive.
part.
Yeah.
Hold on. I know you want to get to the heroic part. Did he pretend he had a gun or a knife?
That's not.
Be honest.
That's not a risk I was willing to take. There was a moment where I was like, I'm bigger than this guy. I could take this guy, but if I do that, I could be bleeding, and we don't want to have that happen. And we survived, and we're here, and it's a great time.
So a small dude bullied you into getting into the back
Average
seat
size.
of his car.
Average size.
And then I presumably he had to walk around to the driver's side, right? At which point you stayed in the back seat, right? You got absolutely just. The word I want to use, I can't use. But anyway, so you got into the back seat.
There is video of me walking outside of a restaurant before the next street had happened, and I'm like, I wasn't. Yikes! Should have taken an Uber.
So you get in the back seat.
Yeah.
And then he says something like, "Do you want to charge your phone?" And again, you do whatever he tells you. So you hand him your phone.
I really wish.
And he plugs in his phone. He plugs in your phone in the front seat. So now you've surrendered your phone. And at some point, you say to him, "Hey, can I have my phone back?" And he says, "What phone?" Right?
I really wish I could have told the DC story. This is not going so hot.
And so now you have. He made you his bitch, put you in his backseat, took your phone, and you realize, I have no idea what to do. Now the heroic part, at a stoplight, eventually you decide this is going south, and you bailed out of the car and took off running, right?
Quick flip to get the door unlocked.
You're lucky that worked. Sometimes they turn
out.
Those off. Child locks, and you're screwed.
I'm no child.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But then James lost his phone, and it was a whole deal. The dude racked up a bunch of charges in a short amount of time, and he had to go through the whole thing with his bank and his phone.
Wall Street Journal did a write-up on it.
So,
on
your case?
No, on what they do, what they do with Apple in general, and what Apple did to fight it, because they had a pretty good, a slick operation going.
All right, so there you go, James, victim of crime. Jess, back to YouTube, says, Nashville is full. I don't know what the hell he is talking about. Stay away from here. It's not exactly the welcome mat for Pete there. And Brightrick says, less crime. Ricky LaFleur says, prices. And then Joseph Vasquez says, I'm good on Texas not being like New York. Yeah, of course it's not. But my point on that, I think he's addressing me saying, every town has all the things that you used to think you could only get in New York. It really does. Maybe if you're into Broadway, right, then you're like, okay, New York's still a place to be. But what? An underground music scene? No. New York's, no. I mean,
yeah.
You don't need to go to New York for that.
Yeah,
you do, Dan?
Bigger acts, better bands come through New York more often than anywhere else. Okay. I mean, you're going to see anything, anywhere, at any time. I think that's a huge thing when you guys were talking about it, is music. And there is a huge underground music scene that we just don't know about. I mean, I do, obviously, but no, I'm kidding.
What, like CBGB?
No, like way more underground. I'm talking like real grungy rooftop shows and stuff like that. And like big acts do come through all the time, so it is a big thing.
Dan, does your life... Yeah, I could see comedy.
Yeah,
I could see comedy.
No. Comedy's everywhere now. It's different. I was just listening to Brian Regan talk about this. He said back in the 80s, it was either L.A. or New York for comedy clubs, and now they're in every city, and it doesn't matter.
Comedy.
Dan, your life, you're a music guy. You're kind of alternative. You're a little hipster.
Sure.
You're all those things.
Sure.
Do you think that you could replicate your life in a satisfactory way in some other town other than New York?
Austin. Nashville.
Okay, so Portland.
Yeah. No, Portland's a little too crunchy for
you gotta
me.
You got to be in the liberal cities. To get what? What do you have to get? So that you can wear your clothes out and not feel weird?
No, it's just art. It's just like artistic, things being around. I don't know. I think it's the access to like a lot of different venues and concerts and acts coming through and things like that. And being able to play somewhere.
Okay.
I mean, I can't just go to, Dallas and be like, hey, can I play this venue? But if you go to these bigger cities, there's always someone that'll take you.
Well, not your kind of music.
You don't know my kind of music.
Not you. What kind of music do you play, Dan?
Like folk.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do you like, Zach Bryan?
A little bit.
Oh. Hey, let's do that. Let's get some samples of Dan's music to play on the show.
I'll do it.
We should 100% do that.
It's been a while. It's been a while, but I'll do it.
Don't sue us.
As long as we can make fun of it.
That's true.
All right. We put this story to you, the listener, the viewer, and to the fellas as well. So, Saturday night, huge college football matchup. Oregon, Ohio State. Close game the entire game. Great game to watch, right? At the end of the game, Oregon is up. What was Oregon up? 2? Something like that? And Ohio State has the ball. The clock is winding down. They're driving down, trying to get in field goal range. Quarterback Will Howard of Ohio State takes a couple bad plays. He takes a sack, but he also advances the ball. There's an offensive pass interference penalty that also puts Ohio State back. In the end, they need 15, 20 yards to get back to in a position to have a chance to kick the field goal to tie the game. On one particular play, as the clock is winding down, we're in the 20-second range, under 20 seconds. Oregon, at the end of a play, is flagged for having too many men on the field. Illegal substitution, 12 men on the field. By the end of this play, the clock has run down another 7 or 8 seconds. Fast forward to the end of the game. The final play is Ohio State quarterback Will Howard scrambling forward. He runs too long. He slides too late. The clock runs out. Those 7 seconds that Oregon burned off when they had too many men on the field became integral to the outcome of the game. Later in the week, people on the internet started talking about this. It was put to Oregon head coach Dan Lanning. Hey, did you take that penalty on purpose? And he kind of smirked and he said, well, we practice a lot of situational football. And basically, as most people are saying now, admitted that he purposefully took the 12 men on the field penalty to burn extra time off the clock. Genius. Right? Don't we all agree? Now, if you're an Ohio State fan, do you feel like that's cheating?
No. Do whatever you can to win until they outlaw it.
Sounds like your quarterback should know not to know how to manage the clock a little better.
But you said as an Ohio State fan.
They're talking about.
I would, because I was an Ohio State fan. But another fan, I would not. Of college football, I would not think that.
I knew your answer.
Yeah,
I knew what your answer would be. Yeah, the rules and the system.
By the way, everyone was calling him Dak
cheating.
Prescott Jr., the Ohio State quarterback, for running the clock out like that.
Okay.
Awareness.
All right.
Terrible quarterback.
They are talking about changing the rules now, and I think they should, by the way. I think they should change it. I don't think you should be able to commit a defensive penalty that burns time off the clock like that in that situation. They should adjust it so you're flagged in that situation, run the clock back to whatever it was at the beginning of the play. But I don't. Not only do I think it's not cheating, I think it's genius from Dan Lanning. And it got me thinking about this, guys. I was thinking about the different types of great coaches. And I think anybody in one of these categories qualifies as a great coach. If you check one of these 4 types of boxes, there is In my estimation, there we go. I said it again. In my estimation, scheme coaches, these are guys who know how to scheme up offensively or defensively situations to put your players in the best possible situation to success. The best example is Kyle Shanahan. He takes Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. He makes him now what people are saying is what? A top 7 quarterback in the league? He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll get to Belichick in a minute. Then there's another type, the development coach. The coach who takes players, makes them better than they are. And I think any coach should do this, but they don't. And to me, the best example for this is Steve Sarkisian, the head coach at the University of Texas. I think he's a great developer, specifically of quarterbacks, and he's taken quarterback after quarterback and turned them into, at the very least, great college quarterbacks. And some of them have gone on to be great NFL quarterbacks. Then you have culture builders. These are guys who build programs around culture. And that culture is the consistency to their greatness. Now, here's where I put Belichick and Saban. And the argument against them being scheme coaches, Dan, is they have changed schemes over time. Like both of those guys, Belichick and Saban, went from like run-heavy offenses to bringing guys in to run RPOs and throwing the ball over the field. So they're not dependent upon their scheme. They build cultures that last. And there's a final group of great coaches, and that's situational coaching. And that's what I'm talking about with Dan Lanning. Guys that understand the game, what needs to be done in a given situation. Now, I think you can be a great coach in any of these 4 categories. The question is, how many coaches can check the box on multiple categories? Because now you're talking about the greatest coaches in the game. And by the way, there's the guys that check none of these boxes as well. Kind of looks like Mike McCarthy for the Cowboys is one of those guys.
Well, I think Belichick checks 1 and 4 because Belichick was a guy who pushed the buttons on things. He would do things that seemed a little questionable, like you were talking about with the Oregon coach, until they outlawed them in the game. And then he would find something else.
Yes.
And he would keep doing it and keep doing it. He'd push the boundaries.
I think you're right. So he's a situational genius, a cultural genius.
Yep.
He's got at least 2. And you could maybe argue, especially defensively, a schematic genius.
Yep.
I think he's all 4. He's probably the best.
Thank you.
Development?
The only guy...
Yeah.
Does he develop Brady? I mean...
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. There's tons and tons
Do you think Belichick gets credit for developing Brady?
I don't think Belichick gets credit for developing Brady. I don't know about that.
You know who would tell you that is Tom Brady.
Really?
He's the first guy to say I never would have became.
I think he put him in the situation to be great. I don't know if he developed him himself.
They were 2 diamonds sharpening each other. If that works. I don't know.
Okay, I would accept it. I mean, I think you're exactly right. He is 3 of the 4. He might be all 4. What about, so if we go to a different sport, I think Pep Guardiola in soccer, I understand the limitations of the appeal of soccer, but he is he's all of these. He develops players into greatness. He has a great scheme. He's got a great culture. And he understands situational. Like in soccer, it's a more fluid game, so the situational thing is not as applicable. You know, that's like calls in the moment. Like a great example of a situational soccer player is there's this great Italian defender. He was beat at midfield, so he just grabbed the dude's jersey, pulled him down, took the yellow card. You know, great idea. Take the yellow card. Who cares? Can't let him have a one on nobody or one-on-one with the goalie going forward. But Andy Reid, we all talked about Andy Reid. I think he's really high up there. And to your point, Patrick, he's not all of them because he's not good situationally, but he's good developmentally. He's good schematically. And as he continues to win everywhere, we probably got to give him some credit on culture.
What about Phil Jackson, NBA?
Yes.
Right? He's got all of them, I feel like.
How about Bruce Bochy?
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think Bruce Bochy's got maybe 3 or 4 of these.
Baseball's tougher. How much development is there in baseball?
Yeah, then you have like pitching coaches, batting coaches.
They have full separate teams that are just minor league development head of.
If Bruce Bochy wins the World Series next year with the Rangers, it's going to be, I mean, give him everything, every accolade, right? Because that's his pattern every other year.
Yeah.
He won the World Series every other year with the Giants. Was it 2 or 3 times?
I think
so. If he does that with the Rangers, I'm sure that's what you guys want to talk about. Rangers right now, right?
I want to talk about the World Series DraftKings odds.
Or the Yankees up 2-0 over the Cleveland Guardians.
How about those World Series odds? That's what we got to give our listeners right now.
The Yankees heavy favorites right now?
It's so nice. It is so.
Hey,
I'm nervous. I'm a little nervous, but
I want him to keep talking.
I'm not nervous about the Cleveland baseball team.
There you go. Cleveland's going to be easy.
One of those four coaches. One of those four coaches. They're all categories of geniuses that make a great coach. I think if you can get a guy in one category, you're in good shape. If you can get a guy in multiple categories, now you're talking. Genius at the end of the Ohio State-Oregon game from Dan Lanning. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back here again tomorrow, same time, same place. I'll see you next time.